So to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Pradipa Karbhari, and I lead cloud-native ecosystem partnerships in Azure Core. So my team works across the partner ecosystem, basically ISVs, SIs, and then all the way to working with customer enablement teams. So again, like I said, super thankful for the opportunity to be partnering with all of you. So let me do this. I want to get started, and when I do, so today we're going to be talking about, let me just get to this, orchestrating the future with Kubernetes and AKS will be the topic of this keynote. And before I get started, with a quick show of hands, I would just love to understand, folks here, in terms of you can just, identify yourselves as belonging with end customers. If you can raise your hands, how many of you here represent end customers who are using the product? So yeah, good to see the mix, thank you. How many would consider yourselves like system integrators or partners that would typically be helping customers with your migration modernization journey? A few hands there as well, thank you. And then last but not least, the ISV section of the audience who will be focused on building solutions that empower the ecosystem. So would love to understand. So yeah, this is a great mix of audiences across the board. So thank you again for helping us understand how all of this comes together. That's what we will be talking about today. So when we get started, I want to talk to you about a couple of themes here, which is if you look at the whole Kubernetes journey as a journey map, we basically see it as two major streams. So one is as a continuation of cloud native maturity, which happens, and I'll talk about a little bit of a double click here. And the other is as a catalyst for AI native platforms. So these are two broad areas if you think about how the evolution is happening in the ecosystem across industries today. And then you might ask the question, but is revolution and evolution something new, or has this always been happening? And so by a quick show of hands, anybody in the audience who's read the book, The Big Switch by Nicholas Carr? And I want to just touch on that as part of this keynote because the theme about evolution and revolution is not new, right? You always have this across different aspects of industry and time. For example, electricity as an evolution. When you had the light bulb moment, literally the invention of the light bulb, things started to take off when there was democratization of electricity, when you had the power grids, when you started having distribution at scale, right? So that, again, marking the beginning of the industrial revolution. And then fast forwarding the era of digital transformations and digitalizations, where you have more automation, you have more capability in the platforms, and things start to mature. And then customers, partners, companies, vendors can all build different solutions. So there is an, again, evolution journey. And now fast forward to where we are today, we now have this unique time, which is almost a conflection or an inflection point, depending on how you think about it, which brings together a convergence of where we went from containers to Kubernetes and now to AKS. So again, let's double click into this a little bit, right? So when you think about containers, the first thing that you think of is, okay, you take your code, you package it with your libraries, you publish it as something, and then you're deploying it where you need to. But then that is only the beginning of the journey. So if you think about the entire journey map, then what happens to that is customers realize, oh, well, if we do this, we are still left with a lot of unanswered questions. Like you have to think about scheduling and scaling, and you have to think about self-healing capabilities for your platform, and then you have to think about how do you manage, monitor. So then along comes the next phase of this journey, which is Kubernetes, which is, okay, now you've got a way to think about containerizing pods that you can now deploy different places, and then you have the ability to actually do a little bit of resilience, and maybe you can think about how you can basically self-heal to a basic degree. And then you also have other things you can do on the platform, but which will not be as comprehensive. Sorry? Yeah, because what you're now dealing with is you still need the ability to manage that service yourself. You still need someone with deep cluster lifecycle experience to be able to manage this, to monitor this, and to do those kinds of things yourself on the platform. So then what you do is you come to the evolution of something like a managed service, which now all of a sudden gives you a whole managed control plane. And now you have resilience built in, you've got scaling, you've got scheduling, you've got observability, troubleshooting. So now you have the entire mix available to you at your service through managed service providers. So that becomes the relevance of how we came from containers to Kubernetes and then onwards to AKS. And now when you think about that journey, there is automatically hybrid and edge expansion available as part of this. So you have the capability to go from on-prem to the cloud and everywhere in between, essentially. And then when you think about a migration and modernization here, as it applies across different industries now, whether you're in FinServe, where you're thinking about how do you have more and more financial services that are layered on top of these containerized platforms and then with layered infrastructure capabilities. And then you have retail, everything from shop floor to top floor automation, what you have in manufacturing. So when you look across different industries and you look across capabilities of what you can provide, fundamentally, it becomes the ability to be able to create these applications that you then deploy, and then you manage and you orchestrate, and then you've got all the surround services that power the whole functioning of this entire model through the empowered ecosystem. So that's kind of how we think about it as an end-to-end. And so now when you think about modern intelligent applications, we now live in the era of agentic AI and Gen AI lifecycle management. So this is again, if you think about it as we talk about a journey map of how we get to this point, now we think about empowering next-gen ecosystem growth, which is not just the growth of our services, and I'll talk to you about this in just a second, but it's also the growth that comes from the extent of what the partners, the customers, what you build based on the platform capabilities we give to you. So it's really empowering you to achieve more through what we provide. So now thinking about modern intelligent applications, let's kind of break this down into layers, right? So if we were to think about it, some of the themes we touched on earlier, like we said, one of the fundamental things is managed operations. So you want to be able to have simplified operations. And what that means is you've got the ability to manage your nodes, your add-ons, your lifecycle management, that entire thing as a unit. You've got that capability. There's a check mark. Then you have developer productivity, which is you've got extensive traffic management capabilities. You can do blue-green deployments. So your productivity comes through DevSecOps. You see these emerging themes as well. So you had DevOps, you had SecOps, you now have DevSecOps, and you also have FinOps. So you're bringing together development, security, operations, financial services. So more and more and more, there is a side-by-side pivoting of an evolution alongside a revolution. And then you have the technologies that empower this through GitHub and productivity workflows that we'll again talk about in more detail today. And then when we talked about the hybrid and edge and what comes from the reliability and performance angle. So now you see this worldwide edge availability and the scaling available, now SLAs. Again, that's where the managed service comes in, right? Rather than having to do all of this yourself, when you're able to layer on the SLAs, that gives you the power from being able to build that mission critical infrastructure. And then you have things like Fleet, which now take it to a whole other multi-cluster distributed global system. So again, we'll go into a lot of these details in the session today. But that's just kind of like I said, peeling the layers of the onion or really breaking this down and looking at it across the different components, if you will. So the elastic scale component, like we talked about earlier, the ability to manage Kubernetes with autoscale, being able to do things like built-in cost management. We give you cost optimization as baked into the platform in several of these areas, which you'll again hear about, like how everything we provide has a certain cost optimization angle to it. And then we talked about the resilience of the platform. So the ability to do automatic rollbacks, upgrades, patches, so updates, upgrades, and then granular controls for all of this so that you're automatically doing all this automated platform management without any downtime. And this combined with a full stack observability. So one thing again there, observability is the ability to look at what's happening in your system. Again, it's OTel-based, like Azure Monitor, you've got Prometheus, Grafana, so forth, Retina, other tools, Inspector Gadget. But again, very importantly, you have the observability to look at the stack all the way from your application down to your infrastructure, but also branching into areas now like LLM observability, because now when you have AI models, observability takes on a whole new meaning, right? So once again, you've got the juxtaposition always of evolution alongside revolution, so that you always have to keep into consideration, how do you leverage the technologies that are available today to power these next-gen ecosystems of tomorrow? And so that continues to be a theme towards everything we build. And now, last but not least, in this, security. Security, again, we'll talk about this in more detail. There's a whole section on security today. It is not something which you bolt on. It is something that is built in fundamentally. So everything from policy enforcement, you've got deployment guardrails, you've got RBAC, secrets management, all of that again baked in, because if you think about the effectiveness of the entire platform that you're going to build as an infrastructure capability that's going to give you the ability to scale and build and continue the growth and then growing at scale, these are all things that become necessities in your platform. Self-healing and reliance, and we talked about this earlier as well as part of what you get in the managed services, which is the ability to do app health checks. This is all, again, self-healing platform, so you don't have to worry about this. This is all managed for you. And the ability to have a choice around OSS solutions as well, which is, again, fundamentally where we come in, because we are able to bring to you the capabilities of the entire open source framework for you to be able to leverage and build on. So with that said, you might have already seen these numbers, which is 94% of the Fortune 500 run on AKS, and we are really pleased at the level of adoption we have seen, and then the number of mission critical applications that are building on this because of its differentiated capabilities. And then the other thing I wanted to point out here is, like we said, AKS does not live alone, right? So the power of the platform comes in the ability to leverage the ecosystem across Azure, of the broad breadth of services that you can leverage, and at the same time, to be able to build on top of the open source foundation. So one of the things, I wanted to call out this thing here about Microsoft being the largest cloud provider contributor to CNCF projects in the last year. And again, the importance of this is, on the one hand, yes, we want to really contribute to that healthy community all up, but equally important for us is three things. So one is, we want to be able to, if there is a security issue, we want to be able to give you the day zero patches as needed. If there's a reliability issue, we want to be able to give you a fix when you need it. If there is a feature you need, we want to be able to build it for you. So we want to be as hands-on as we can in both committing what we can to the OSS, as well as giving you the ability to leverage the OSS solutions as part of what you get when you work with AKS and with broader Azure all up. With that said, I also want to talk to you about this, which is Microsoft runs AKS at scale. So one of the things that, in terms of our commitment to the platform, we are not just providing cloud native for the ecosystem to build on. This is one of the strongest bets for Microsoft itself as we undergo a whole transformation in our journey. So for example, if you look at the kinds of services that are called out here, ChatGPT, right? Something that we use every day. But the entire, when you type in something to a prompt, the way that gets surfaced to you is through AKS, right? So the level of commitment that Microsoft has to AKS as a product and to the entire ecosystem is something I just wanted to mention here. The same thing across modern work and Office 365. Again, a lot of the products that we consider mainstream to Microsoft are all now being transformed to either they're already leveraging AKS or they're building on AKS. The same kind of thing for Teams. AI-powered meeting recaps, right? So things that you take for granted, but now are all coming because of the power of the platform. Again, being able to leverage everything we talked about, because things like this resiliency, the performance, the scale, all of that matters to us in terms of delivering these kinds of capabilities to you, just like we provide them to you to be able to deliver other services that you build on. Personalized recommendations, game streaming, for example, with Xbox, that happens through AKS. Last but not least, Copilot assisted coding, right? So things like that with GitHub, again, all running on top of AKS. So that wanted to call this out as our commitment to really leveraging cloud native, because this is where the future is, right? And we recognize that we want to be able to build on this, to do this again, showing our commitment to the platform, as well as this is what our business models are based on now, because this is what we need to be able to scale and build the systems of the future. So with that said, this is what we're going to focus on. This is a broad flywheel that is represented here. But if you look at all the different elements in this wheel, just like we talked about earlier, I talked about the layers, right? If you peel that onion, you look at the layers across the board. If you think about what enablement means at different levels, all the way from the infrastructure to the applications that you're running on, these are the main themes that we see as coming together in this picture. So on the one hand, you've got represented on the top, the Azure ecosystem as a whole with different capabilities. Because like we said, AKS does not live alone. It basically is surrounded by this huge ecosystem of different services that are built in Azure. And then, for the most recent ones, for example, when you're thinking about AI capabilities, you're leveraging things like platform as a service components from Azure ML services. And then all the way to when you're building something with open source, we have things like Kaito, which is our own open source tooling. So again, everything that we do contributing to open source as well as leveraging from the ecosystem, all of that is something that is brought to you through AKS. And when you think about the different elements here, I will go into all of these in detail today in some of the sections in the talk tracks today, but boosting developer productivity in AI apps. So I'm just going to walk you through some of these and the main themes and elements here. So on the one hand, It's about enabling our developers. How do we make them more productive on our platform? How do we give you the security that you need to be able to scale as you need, but then in a secure fashion? And then the other things on resiliency, availability, and other aspects of capacity management. And then last but not least, cost optimization. So if we think about this, and then, like I said earlier, layering on the OSS from the community, this is the most important thing in terms of how this is all coming together. At every KubeCon, you see the themes that are coming out. It's always like, we're shifting further and further to the left in terms of security, right? Observability with security. And then, like I said earlier, you've got DevSecOps, which is going to be fundamental to everything we do. You've got FinOps, which becomes very important when it comes to cost optimization. So these kinds of capabilities, and then GitOps for CI/CD workflows, automation. So when you're thinking about the power of what the ecosystem offers, you're building on that, you're leveraging that through AKS, and then you're leveraging the power of the whole Azure ecosystem and the services that we have. So ultimately, you're covered with a very comprehensive platform and service offerings that enable you on your journey. So with that said, the first one on boosting developer productivity, here again, giving you as the end customer the ability to focus on just building your apps and not having to worry about your infrastructure. And for those of you who are partners here, who are then helping the end customer, it's to enable you to help innovate alongside your customers and not have to worry about the infrastructure. So again, there are different layers depending on where you are in the ecosystem and how this impacts you. So moving on, securing AKS across the stack. Like I said, there's a very detailed talk track on this today because built-in security, this becomes so fundamental to everything we do. A lot of our customers we talk to, big and small, the first thing they want to know is how secure is the platform. Given everything that we see in the environment today, that is one thing that you can, again, totally rely on. Microsoft runs on trust. We run on security. AKS bolts in security. So it's built on security, not just bolting on, but really security built in from the ground up. So that's the power, again, that you get knowing that your clusters are secure, and you don't have to worry about your workloads and data in terms of security. And then when you think about reliability and scaling in a reliable fashion, you've got all these capabilities that are now built in for you, which is like everything from auto-scaling, advanced capacity management, resilient infrastructures. So ultimately, what you get is high availability, and you've got operational confidence across the board. So again, we will be diving into all of these in the sections today, but this is just kind of setting the vision and how we're thinking about all of this all up, and why every piece of this is so fundamental to what we leverage and what we are able to build as AKS and the surround services. So with that said, this is the last slide in my section where I want to talk to you about the partner and the customer journey map. So the investments that we have as Microsoft, some of you may already be familiar with this, may already be using this, but there is a QR code here on the bottom. So please feel free to scan that and then reach out if you have any questions. We are happy to engage with you and answer questions and then connect you to the right set of folks to help you take you forward on your journey. But so here, the thing is the Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program, for example, that you might already know about, that becomes a big umbrella program. And then under that, you've got all these things like Azure Accelerate, you've got Cloud Accelerate Factory you can leverage in terms of building solutions, Founders Hub for the startups, ISV Success for Advanced. So different stages of the partner journey, different enablements needed for the customer are all covered through what we do here through these programs. And then the success of partners and solution plays. So for example, how are you able to leverage these programs? What kind of customer projects are you working on? Migration, modernization, and then also app innovation. So all of that coming together under some of these umbrellas to give you a more streamlined workflow, both for the partners as well as for the customers, and then guaranteeing customer success and delivery. We have several artifacts that are available, like landing zones, solution accelerators, again, things you may already be leveraging. But then, for any additional questions, please do feel free to reach out. And then we also wanted to call out, if you think about this as a whole journey on how that partner roadmap is enabled for customer success, we also have partner engagements, for example, and I hope you're joining AKS roadmap community calls that are being held now on a regular cadence. And then we also have the AKS customer concierge service. We also have things like the partner forum. So we are trying to, as the product group, we are trying to layer on top of what you already get from Microsoft in giving you more of what we can do to help enable you on your journey. Again, from a partner perspective as well as from a customer perspective. And then regardless of where you are in that migration, modernization, app innovation journey. And then if you're an ISV, for example, you may be even building an app that you're going to publish to the marketplace. So how do you build and publish that app? And then how do you make it something that further enhances the power of the ecosystem? So different areas and focus areas available here for engagement. And then last but not least, we also have the Cloud Native Partner Showcase series, where we want to bring the partner solutions for customers to be able to see the kinds of things that they can leverage as part of their journey. So for those of you who are building something very innovative and with AKS again, please feel free to reach out through that QR code, and we will be happy to engage and then to help you further on your journey. So with that said, I am now going to turn this over to Nick to take us through the next part of the journey. So and thank you so much. That was great. Thanks a lot. You got yours.